Hello? You know, it's a lot of times I'd like to talk about really abstruse metaphysics, and then I go, you're going too deep. You're just going to confuse people. Try to keep it simple. It's like, oh, how do you discuss really abstruse principles of metaphysics without causing confusion? Even when I simplify it, I still cause a lot of confusion. Reification of things that don't exist. I mean, human beings, while we have all our wonderful gadgets and electronic toys, are intellectually unevolved, to be certain, beyond any shadow of a doubt. Specifically, talk about several things that don't exist that we use in our daily language, not only regarding science, but also things we take for granted. And we, as existential human beings, believe that we are, and these things are real, since we swim within the sea of space and time and shadows and emptiness and light and whatnot. We think these things exist. But I want to give you a list, and let's talk about and break them down. Things that we think exist and we take for granted, but actually do not exist at all. Emptiness, a shadow, waves, time, space, light. And it's an ancient principle found among the Greeks and the Indians. They talk about things that do things to us, but which don't really exist. One of them is called the rope snake analogy. Really famous, and Advaita Vedanta is found in the Sri Sankaracharya's works of the Upadisahasri and the Vivachudamuni, and also found in the Upanishads, like the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad has like 12 mentions of the rope snake, I believe. That's the first principle of Upanishad. Rope snake, of course, there was no cure for snake bites, and you know, when you had to go out and take a piss or a poop in the middle of the night, since you didn't have toilets in your domicile, you could very easily get bit on the ankle by a snake that you stepped on in the dark. And when you got bit, there's no cure, there's no anti-venom, you're going to die. People would think they'd actually see a twig or something and think that it was a snake, and they'd get scared to death. And in some elderly people's cases, they were literally scared to death by something that did not exist. So we actually have real effects from something that is completely non-existent. And now all of these things have their antinomy. We have reified an absence because none of these things exist. I've made like 10 or 20 videos on why light doesn't exist, and you have to differentiate out light from illumination. What we think of as light is purely conceptual. What is actually going on is a field perturbation. Nothing emits light, and it's a field perturbation. And when we speak of light, we're really only speaking of illumination, because until the field perturbation is manifest due to capacitance, resistance, permeability, or permittivity, there is no manifestation. You know, in the blackness of space, which is really kind of a hyperbolic saying, you know, there is light everywhere, but it is unmanifest. And once again, I'm using the word light because that's what we're so used to thinking. It's like, there's light. No, that's illumination. That's manifestation due to resistance, permeability, or permittivity. Reflectance, you know, like how does a mirror work? Well, it's a silver backing and it's a dielectric reflector. It is actually has extremely low dielectric permittivity to the electromagnetic radiation that is light, and it is rebounding it back into your eyeballs. And this is why, of course, I talked about, like, if you could actually have an invisible man or invisible woman, whatever, that they would be completely blind, because they are by definition invisible and therefore transparent to the manifestation of light. So if you could become invisible, you would instantly become blind, because light cannot manifest and you would not be able to see jack crap. Light does not exist. It's really a concept. The antinomies to all of these things are very simple, and this is why we have reified things that don't exist. Emptiness, for example, is an absence of phenomena. But emptiness is purely conceptual, because there's no such thing as emptiness, because if you could see emptiness or witness it or describe it, then you would be the witness thereof to it, and the denotative proclamation of this as emptiness would be incorrect, since you are witness to it by some way, shape, or form, either directly or indirectly, and therefore it is by definition not emptiness. Emptiness does not exist. It is purely a conceptual contrivance of the minds of stupid, pathetic human beings. When we say emptiness, we're actually talking about the absence of phenomena, but this is not emptiness in denotation in absolute. A shadow is not a thing. There's no such thing as a shadow. We say shadow, there's a shadow here, shadow. Something's casting a shadow. Something is casting a shadow. Shadow is not a thing in itself. A thing in itself is, now the Indians and Greeks were really smart, at least the metaphysicians of the Indians and Greeks were really smart about a thing in itself. In other words, it exists as itself, by itself. A shadow is just an absence of light. A shadow is not a thing. There's no such thing as a shadow. It cannot be reified as a principle or subject. Now, technically it is a noun, but the only reason it's a noun is because human beings are ignorant, knuckle-dragging morons. A shadow does not exist. If aliens were to land, I mean, they would, look at 10 billion things and just, declare human beings to be completely ignorant fools, which of course they are in general, both in specific and otherwise. Waves. As I've explained about a million times, there's no such thing as a wave. A wave is not what something is. A wave is what something does. A wave's antinomy is actually the impotence of energy. Manifestation is impotence. We think of energy as a manifestation, but it's not. I mean, take a really simple example, a baseball-sized lump of plutonium. We do not think of that as energy if we didn't know it was plutonium, for example. Only once it's exploded and, turned everybody's eyebrows orange and, fried your dog into a cinder block do we think of that as energy. That's not energy. That's the release or the impotency of energy. A wave is not a thing either. There's no such thing as a wave. A wave is the attribute of something releasing energy. Waves of this, waves of that. There's no such thing as a wave in itself. A wave is no different than a shadow or light or emptiness. These are things that do not exist. Time. Time is not a thing at all. There's no such thing as time. Sure there is. We live in the world of time. We go watch. We know people get old and born and die. We see this. Plants, we can set our clock by it. Time doesn't exist. Time is a reification of the lack of eternity. Time and magnetism, by the way, and space are one and the same thing. With a manifestation of measure and magnitude and mass, measure, magnitude, and mass, i.e. magnetism, is manifestation of space and time. Space is not a thing. Space is the antinomy of inertia or pure energy. It is non-Cartesian. It is counterspatial. It is purely the ether itself, which, for example, people say ether and space. I keep hearing that it's ether and space. There's no such thing as ether and space. Rather, space and the ether. In other words, the space itself, which has no properties, is a bubble in the pure potential, which would be the non-Cartesian value, which we call ether. Now, Mother Nature doesn't give a damn what you call it. Inertia, ether, pure energy, counter space, who gives a damn what you call it? It's one and the same thing. There's bubbles in the ether, but there's no such thing as, ether in space. Space has no properties. Nothing is in space, which is, that would actually take about 4 or 5 videos to explain. Light. Light is just the absence of energy manifest as a field modality, but light itself does not exist. Light is purely conceptual. Now this is very difficult to explain, and I've explained it in like 15 different videos, which you think would not be so hard, but I mean, it actually, well, it's not hard for me, but I mean, it's hard to convey to people why light doesn't exist, and it's purely conceptual. We speak of light, we're not speaking about light, we're speaking about manifestation. Without manifestation, there is no light to be seen. Just as the invisible person would never see anything. They would be blind to everything. An invisible person has no dielectric permittivity or magnetic permeability by which a field perturbation, specifically an ether perturbation, to manifest. That is all the coaxial nature of light is, the transverse electromagnetic and longitudinal pulse perturbation of the dielectric emission. And nothing is emitting, so I'm actually incorrect in using the word emission. The field perturbation. I mean, a person in the middle of a pond flapping their arms and causing waves. Waves of what? Waves of water. In this case, the water would be the ether. A person in the middle of a pond waving, flapping their arms, creating pulse perturbations in the water, i.e. the medium, in this case the ether, is not emitting anything. I mean, it's stupid, both denotatively and empirically, to say that like a light bulb emits something. It doesn't. It sets up a field perturbation. A light bulb doesn't emit anything. I mean, that's stupidity. Nor is there any such goddamn thing as a photon. That's purely a conceptual reification that is not the scientific output or input of any experiment ever done. The entire cult of quantum is based upon their misconception of light as both particle and wave, which also blows my mind to the point, that I want to laugh my ass off, because it sure as hell is not a particle, and a wave is not a thing. They say, well, is light a particle or a wave? It could be both or one or the other, It's neither one. It's not a particle, and a wave is not a thing. So light is just the absence of energy as manifest as a field modality perturbation. So these things are only manifest as reifications of absence due to what they are in reference to. Like I said, these things do not exist. Emptiness, shadow, waves, time, space, light, and in the case like the rope snake analogy, things that don't exist that could actually cause true harm. Now the rope snake, the rope snake is not understanding, that hey, it's a stick laying on the ground. It could be a snake, and like an older person thinking it's a snake, they're about to get bitten and die. They have a heart attack. But I mean, it's an absence of knowledge. It's like, hey, there's just a twig laying on the ground. All of these things are manifest due to something else. Emptiness is the absence of phenomena. Shadow is a reification of the absence of light, or specifically illumination, but like I said, that takes a lot of videos to explain, which I've already done already. Waves is just the impotency of energy, but a wave is not a thing at all. It's like, well, what is waving? What is electromagnetic? What? No branch of science has ever defined a wave. Maxwellian field equations have never defined what a field is. They've only defined effects of fields over a period of time with a certain effect as measured in joules or watts and so on and so forth. These are all reifications of absence. Absence of knowledge, absence of energy, absence of inertia, absence of light, in quotes there, absence of phenomena in the case of emptiness. There's no such thing as emptiness. Another one actually to be added to this is chaos. Chaos is purely conceptual. There's absolutely no goddamn such thing as chaos. I mean, it's ludicrous. We have incredibly complex systems, layer upon layer upon layer, but that does not mean they're chaotic. There's no such thing as a chaotic system. It's absolutely impossible for there to be such a thing as chaos. I should have added that one. Chaos is just what we denote something as way too complex and convoluted with multiform, variegated output. I mean, that's just chaos. Like, no, there's no such thing as chaos. There's no mathematical proof for any such thing as chaos either, and math, of course, is only about things that can be quantified, not things that cannot be quantified, which is everything, since fields have no quantity and they can't be counted, and modern scientists are not scientists denotatively, they're mathematicians. And that's such an important point that you were never taught in high school or college, is that mathematicians and their quantifications of things cannot explain anything that has no quantity. Really tired. It's been a long day today. Anyways, this is one of the fundamental aspects, and there are countless ones, fundamental aspects of metaphysics, hardcore monistic, Platonic, and Advaitic. Should I have actually said that? Should I just said non-dualism? Non-dualism is stupid. I should say Advaitic. That's actually a tough word to say. Advaitic. Non-dualistic. See, people understand that if I say it in English. I'm used to thinking and saying Advaitic. Advaitic metaphysics. I hope this wasn't too abstruse of a video, but these are things that we reify as existent, but which actually have no existence at all. Now, we swim in a sea of space and time and waves and shadow, but these things do not fundamentally exist. They have no reality whatsoever. They're reifications of the absence of something else. Just like, I don't know, loneliness or unhappiness or something like that. These are not things. They are due to the absence of something else, like, someone that you love dying, or, being separated or something like that. It's like, well, the results are real. I felt sad because my dog died. Well, I understand that that's real to you, but what you're actually speaking of is the absence of your dog. I mean, this is not a thing in of itself. But anyway, that gets onto a whole nother level. That's not specifically monistic metaphysics. That would apply to existential psychology. And I hate psychology, and I hate existential philosophy, which is not philosophy denotatively anyway. I can't stand Western existentialist scumbags like Kant and Hume and Hegel and the rest. Hegel wasn't too bad, but I have no interest in that sort of garbage philosophy, which is what it is. Westerners were never good at philosophy, not real philosophy anyway. Not in the true sense of the Pythagoreans, i.e. philosophia, the love of wisdom. That's sophistry. Western existentialism is mostly skepticism and sophistry, and none of those things cultivate or grow wisdom. That's why they're not philosophy by true definition anyway. So, lux veritas, and if you like these videos, you can click the link below. Tell me to jump off a cliff, whatever makes you happy. I get lots of requests to discuss abstruse topics in metaphysics. I can make like 1 billion videos on abstruse metaphysics. Might bore the hell out of everybody, but I keep getting asked to do it, and I could make a lot of them. A lot. My only constraint is time, because time is limited. I'm so busy all the time doing stuff, actually. Thank you so much for watching, and catch you later. Bye.